fraud. And frankly, if Minnesota had done a better job of combating the fraud, we would not be here at this press conference today. We'd send out a letter celebrating the fact that Minnesota had worked with us to cut down on some of the fraud. I'll let Dr. Oz speak a little bit more to that question, but look, the best way for this to work would be for the federal government to work with the state governments. We'd love for that to happen. I think you're going to see that in some states, even some blue states, but you're not going to see it in others.
The working family tax cut legislation, for the first time in a long time, aligned the president and vice president with the governor so they have the same goal. So we've been talking to the states a lot. We are generating some frameworks that we believe states could apply. Medicaid is run by the state. They know their most vulnerable populations well. It's different than Alaska on the North Shore slope where you can't get there this time of year to southern Alabama, lower Alabama, or LA as they call it. But the reality is there are similarities that govern some of these programs, especially the ones that are at high risk. And so we're going to share those best practices. But the techniques that we're using in Minnesota can be applied in other states. But it's the fraud, however, that will drive that. And so there are some states, I mentioned Florida, that's a red state, where there's a big fraud problem in the southern part. They're trying to get their arms around it. We've sent a letter to Minnesota, which has a Republican senator. We're very concerned about New York, where the single most prominent job in New York is a personal care service. Retail is not the top job in New York anymore. And in fact, in California, there are more hospices, I believe, in Los Angeles County alone than the rest of the country. So these are aberrancies that are hard for the states sometimes to see, but your first inclination, if you're the vice president and you're running a task force, is to look at those areas and say, how can you ignore that kind of a discrepancy, especially when there's been a massive uptick in some of these services in a short period of time?
Great. We'll take just one more question here, sir.
What is your message to the people of Minnesota who are still upset by the ICE surge as well? And this is just one more thing on top of that.
Well, first of all, I think our message to the people of Minnesota is that we love them. They're our fellow citizens. We're trying to do right by them. And part of the reason, in fact, the main reason that we're doing this is that we want to make sure that the people of Minnesota have access to the services that they're entitled to. We want poor kids in Minnesota, lower income families in Minnesota to be able to get the health care that they need. We got to stop the fraud in order to make sure that happens. We want to make sure that if you have a special needs kid and we have a program set up to help that special needs kid, that the money goes to the special needs family, not to a fraudster who's getting rich off the generosity of American taxpayers. Now, you talk about the ICE surge. Again, I think it goes back to the question I just answered, which is so much of what is broken in Minnesota, as far as I can tell, is a lack of cooperation between the state government and the federal government. If you look at any blue city or any blue state or red city or red state, the immigration enforcement that we were doing was going smoothly. We'd find out that there was an illegal alien sex offender at a prison. We'd show up, we'd arrest that person, and we'd send him out of our country. Or maybe that person was a repeat offender and they were out of prison. The local authorities would say, you know what, go and go to this person's address and arrest this guy because we want that violent criminal out of our community. What was so bizarre about Minneapolis is that it was one of the few places in the entire country where they said, no, we're not going to help the federal government get illegal alien sex traffickers out of our community. We are going to do everything that we can to prevent federal immigration enforcement from happening, even when you're going after the very worst of the very worst. Similarly, I would think that if I was the governor or a leader in Minnesota, I would want the benefits that ought by right to go to needy children. I want them to go to those needy children and not to fraudsters, whether they're from the Somali community or anywhere else. But no, we haven't gotten the cooperation. So what I would say to the people of Minnesota is that we want to do right by you. We think you deserve better public services.